Okay, so the last PowerPoint that I had handed out was actually a little bit of tips and tricks for using the CPT index. So that covers, there's some notes here, similar to a dictionary. You're going to have your key terms listed across the top of the page, like a dictionary. Everyone knows how to look things up in a dictionary, right? So, fairly basic. The procedure codes are listed in numerical order, except for those resequenced codes, so they are in numerical order. So there's a number of ways that the codes can be listed. They can be listed by, of course, the anatomical site. They may be listed by the condition that is represented. Those synonyms, the eponyms, and the abbreviations. Can anyone tell me what an eponym is? An eponym is actually a procedure that is named after the person who invented it. So Mohs surgery, has anybody ever heard of Mohs surgery, M-O-H-S? It's a procedure that's performed in tegumentary system, but it was named after Frederick Mohs. So an eponym is something that is named, a particular procedure named after.
Seems like that's more common for diseases and syndromes and stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Synonyms, phalanges, fingers. So you may be able to look up the particular codes based on that. Abbreviations. We know in the world of HIM and medical coding, there's a lot of abbreviations, especially in medical. There's so many different abbreviations. If you're not sure about what an abbreviation is, look it up. I can't emphasize using the resources enough. Has anyone ever logged into the EBSCO host here at the MCC library? Have you? There are instructions on Blackboard on how to log in. If you go to the MCC library, those instructions are on Blackboard, and there's a password that you can use to log in. There are so many resources on there. I mean, I'm talking anatomical thesauruses. There's, when I first noticed that we had this resource, I was like, I have it. Because it's just, there is so many there. If you ever have to write a paper for a particular class, they have what's called CINAHL. It's C-I-N-A-H-L. That's the acronym for it. It's the world's largest allied health clinical database. So it has scholarly articles for, it's the largest collection of them. So, but there are instructions for logging into that, and you've got Stedman's Medical Dictionary there, you've got pharmacology resources, there's probably upwards of 30 somewhat different medical or allied health resources and references on there. It's an excellent, excellent tool and great for this class. I also have those coding resources, the links on Blackboard, so keep that in mind as well. You do have access to a lot of those. I don't expect you to sit down and read every single one of those sites. I mean, just know where each of them brings you, because as we start to progress through the class, those are little bookmarks for you. When we start touching on separate bodily systems, use that recall to say, oh, there was a site. That's using your tools. So we do have our abbreviations, of course. If we had one for MMR, that's measles, mumps, rubella, that would tell us to look at our vaccines. So any of the codes can be looked up by using numerous different methods. I mean, if I were to take and throw a code out there and I had 5 people in the classroom look it up, guaranteed all 5 people would have a different way of getting there. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's you figuring out what works best for you in looking these up. So we had our 6 main sections in the CPT manual. Then we have broken down into specific subsections. So again, in the surgery section, which is the largest section, it's broken down by bodily system. Each bodily system is considered a subsection. Then we have our subheadings. So our subheadings further break down that particular section. We have categories. The categories typically are the procedure that's performed, such as the incision and drainage. A standalone code is one of those codes that is, when we looked in the index at some of those examples, that just that one code by itself. An indented code that is off of a standalone code provides a little bit more information about that particular code. It's almost like the subheading. It gives a little bit more info. And then if we have a little plus sign in front of the code, that's one of those add-on codes that I had mentioned. That they've done the research on this particular code and they know that if this procedure is performed, it involves this procedure as well. It has an add-on code. So both codes would apply to that particular episode. In this, I actually break down what those different, the category 1, 2, and 3, and then I break down the examples with the F and the T, and then the J. The J would be a medicine code for HCPCS, J codes. Again, if an unlisted procedure is used, it has to be followed up with documentation. Documentation has to be sent along with that particular claim form. An unlisted code in each set, we'll take a look at these when we start to get into the separate sections, but they always end in 99. Always end in 99.
Does that happen often, that there's unlisted codes?
Not necessarily, because where this is updated annually, any new technologies and emerging technologies, in order for a code to make it into the CPT, it has to be something that's practice kind of wide range. You know, if you have one physician that's doing a particular service, it may not make it in here, but it might be considered after a while as well. There is information on the AMA website where you can actually suggest a code and why. So it's almost like proposing it, but then it has to go through a process with the FDA, it has to go through an approval process, and that's why it would end up in one of those, you know, the volume 3 for the technology, it would end up in that section until it was actually approved. Make sense? So unlisted codes are found in the beginning of the section and they're found at the end of the section as well. You'll see when we start to get into the separate sections that they're found in more than one location. And of course they end in the 99. How do you feel? Good? Okay. So I had mentioned that in the workbook you do have answers to your particular questions. I don't expect you to pass in the workbook each week. You will have an assignment on Blackboard each week, so you will have that assignment. I base the assignments totally separate than the textbook and the workbook, because how can you assess whether or not you're actually applying the appropriate codes if you have all the answers? How do you know you're doing well? So I think that it's fair to you to know I'm getting this. You know, I mean, CPT coding is it's a pretty fun skill, but I think that by kind of mixing it up a little bit and giving you assignments or coding assignments that you don't have access to is a little bit better, because then you know how you're doing. You know if you're getting it or not. So it can be kind of interesting. Okay, so in the workbook, why don't we take a look at, I believe that the answers that you have, in the textbook, you have all the answers. You have all the answers for all the exercises in the textbook. I believe for the workbook that you have the answers to the first 5 questions. Each week, what I'll do at the end of the week is I'll post the answer key for each chapter in the workbook. But I think that for right now, why don't we take a look at page 2, and we'll do a couple of these. Why don't we do number 6, 7, and 8? That way it gets you started, so you're not overwhelmed with all the coding you have to do on your own. I don't mind if you bounce things off of each other as well, because that's kind of essentially what coding is all about. Is when you get out there in the healthcare industry, a lot of the times you are asking, I would code it this way, how would you code it? So exercise 1.2. I'm going to do 6, 7, and 8. We'll start with those. procedure or the assignment of a particular code. So what do you think about that first code? Do you think that our documentation supports the assignment of that particular CPT code for that service?
I think it should end in 57, 77057.
77057?
Yes, it says bilateral, and the other one was, sorry, I gotta get back there. Unilateral, but 77057 says screening, would be bilateral. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
1.2. So it's code 45384. They're asking if CPT code 45384.
All right, maybe I'm looking at the wrong exercise.
Are we doing 1.2?
Yeah, I'm doing 1.2, number 1.
Okay, we're doing 6, 7,
Oh,
and
I was looking at the
Yeah.
board right there.
Oh, well, 1.2, but we're doing 6, 7, and 8.
I'm sorry.
That's
I
all
was looking at
right.
the board. Oh.
My bad. No.
No, I was looking at, okay, we're gonna do 1, 2,
You have,
6, 7,
you
and
have
8.
the answers for 1 through 5.
Okay.
So that's why I figured we do 6, 7, and 8. That only leaves you 2 more to do for the weeks.
All right, sorry.
Here's your break. That's all right. You just had me thinking I might get in the wrong book.
No, because I was looking at the board, I'm like, oh, I guess she wants us to do 1, 2, and then 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah. 1.2. Think the code is good? Code is good. Yep, our documentation does support the assignment of that particular code. What about number 7? You don't like that one?
I wrote a different code.
So what code did you think was more appropriate for that particular episode?
49520.
So close. 49521. Now why, now in taking a look at that, why would it be 59521 instead of the 0? It's incarcerated. It's incarcerated, so that one term, that one term, so. Everybody feeling good about it? 49521. Absolutely. How about number 8? Number 8, does our documentation support code 43275?
No, we had 43264.
You have 43264?
Yeah.
Was that what you said? 43264? Absolutely correct. 43264 would be the appropriate code on that. Did anyone code it anything differently? Or maybe I didn't give you enough time? What do you think? Want to do a few more? All right, so let's take a look at in chapter 2. Why don't we do, in exercise 2.3, we'll do 6, 7, and 8 of those. This is more, we're not looking at the code itself and determining if it was appropriate. We're actually applying the code